name's Trevor, and this happened about 3 years ago when I was living in a small apartment complex just outside of Portland. It was one of those places where everyone kind of keeps to themselves. You might nod to your neighbor in the hallway, maybe exchange a "hey" or "how's it going," but that's about it. I was 24, fresh out of college, working remote tech support, and honestly just trying to figure out life. Rent wasn't cheap, but the place was quiet, and the building itself was old enough to have character without feeling run down. At least, that's what I thought at first. The first time I noticed something off was during my second week there. I was taking out my trash late at night, maybe around 11, and I saw my neighbor from 3B standing at the end of the hallway. He was just staring at the wall. Not like inspecting something or fixing it, just standing completely still, facing the wall. He didn't move, didn't react when I walked past him. I said, "Hey man, everything okay?" Nothing. I figured he was drunk or sleepwalking or something, so I just tossed my trash and went back inside. That was my introduction to him, the guy from 3B. I didn't even know his name back then. Over the next few weeks, I'd see him here and there. He was maybe in his late 40s, tall, with this kind of washed-out look, like he hadn't slept in days. Always in the same clothes, gray sweatpants, a black hoodie. I remember his shoes were beat-up white sneakers with a dark stain on the side. He kept his head down when he walked, never said a word to anyone. There were only 8 units in the whole building, so you'd think people would talk more, but everyone seemed to go out of their way not to mention him. One afternoon I was getting my mail and I noticed something weird. One of the envelopes in my box had his name on it, Elliot Payne. It had been shoved into my slot by mistake. It was one of those official-looking letters with the county seal on it. I knocked on his door to hand it back. He didn't answer. I could hear the TV on inside, though. Some kind of static-filled noise, maybe an old documentary. I knocked again, louder this time. That's when the sound stopped, just cut off completely. After about 10 seconds of silence, I heard footsteps. Slow, dragging ones, coming right up to the other side of the door. Then nothing. I waited a few seconds, said, "Hey, I think this got mixed into my mail," and slid the envelope under the door. The footsteps started again, this time going away. That should have been the end of it, but when I went back to my apartment later, I saw that same envelope sitting right in front of my door, like he had slid it back under mine while I was gone. At that point, I figured maybe the guy had dementia or something. I tossed the envelope onto my kitchen counter and forgot about it. That night, around 3 a.m., I woke up to a soft tapping sound. It was rhythmic. 3 taps, pause. 3 taps, pause. Coming from my wall. I live in 3A, right next to his apartment. I banged on the wall once, thinking it was him doing something weird again, but the tapping stopped. I went back to sleep. Next morning, I was getting ready for work and went to grab my jacket from the coat rack near the door. And that same envelope was sitting on the floor again. Except this time, it was open. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 3 words written in this messy, almost shaky handwriting. "Stop knocking back." I can't explain the feeling I had reading that. Like ice water poured down my spine. I told myself there had to be some rational explanation. Maybe it wasn't even from him. Maybe some kids in the building were messing around. Still, I decided to start keeping my door locked at all times, even when I was home. A few days later, I ran into one of my neighbors, this older lady named Cheryl who lived upstairs. I mentioned Elliot casually, asking if she knew much about him. Her whole demeanor changed. She lowered her voice and said,
"You should stay away from him, honey. He's been here longer than any of us. Management tried to evict him once, but he didn't take it well."
I asked what she meant, but she just shook her head and said,
"It's better if you don't get involved."
That was enough for me. I made a point not to look at his door when I passed by anymore. But of course, avoiding him didn't help. One night, I came home late from grabbing takeout. As I was walking up the stairs, I saw something out of the corner of my eye. A faint light flickering under his door, like candlelight. The whole hallway smelled faintly of bleach. I didn't think much of it until I got inside my own apartment and noticed something even worse. My top lock was open. I always keep it closed. I froze, holding my breath, listening. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. I checked the windows, all locked. I checked the bathroom. Empty. The only weird thing was that my bedroom closet door was slightly open. I never leave it that way. I picked up the heaviest thing I could find, a hammer from my toolkit, and pulled the door open. Nothing. Just my clothes and boxes. I felt stupid for panicking, but that night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that smell, bleach, and that flickering light under his door. 2 nights later, around midnight, the fire alarm went off. The whole building scrambled outside into the cold, half asleep and annoyed. But when we all looked up, there was no smoke, no fire. Just Elliot standing in the parking lot barefoot, staring at the building. The landlord showed up about 20 minutes later, furious. He told us someone had pulled the alarm manually, and guess whose apartment the handle was located right next to? Elliot's. The next morning, there was police tape across his door. I thought maybe they'd finally evicted him. But no, the landlord told me later that day that Elliot was under investigation for a missing person case. Apparently, a maintenance worker from another complex had vanished, and Elliot had been one of the last people to speak to him. I didn't sleep for the next few nights. I'd hear noises through the wall again, not tapping this time, but faint whispers, like someone talking softly, having a one-sided conversation. Then, one night, I woke up to my apartment door creaking open. I froze in bed, eyes wide open. I could see a faint shape standing in the doorway, tall, still, unmoving. My first thought was that I was dreaming, but then I heard breathing, slow, heavy breathing. I reached over, grabbed my phone, and turned on the flashlight, but the second I did, the shape was gone. The door was wide open, though. I called the cops. They came, looked around, found nothing. But the officer told me something that made my skin crawl. There were faint, wet footprints in the hallway, leading from my door straight to Elliot's. The next morning, his apartment was empty, completely cleared out. Furniture, clothes, everything, gone overnight. The landlord swore he hadn't moved out officially, and none of the tenants saw any moving truck. His unit was locked from the inside, but no one was in there. A few days later, management had a locksmith open the door. I wasn't supposed to be there, but I watched from down the hall. When the door opened, I caught a glimpse of what was inside. The walls were completely covered in pages of lined notebook paper, all filled with the same 3 words over and over again. Stop knocking back. They said there was a trap door in the bedroom floor, some kind of maintenance crawl space that no one had known about. It led down into the basement, which hadn't been used in years. They never told us what, if anything, they found down there. I moved out the following week. Sometimes, I still wake up at night to that same 3-beat tapping sound on my wall. I don't know if it's in my head or if it's following me, but I don't knock back anymore. Not ever. My name's Linda, and I've lived on Maple Drive for most of my adult life. It's one of those small-town streets where nothing ever really happens. The kind of place where people decorate their mailboxes for the holidays and still borrow sugar from next door. I'm retired now, and most of my days are quiet. I drink my coffee on the porch, tend to my garden, and watch the neighborhood go about its business. But last spring, something, or rather someone, moved in that changed all that. The house at number 9 had been empty for years after the previous owners moved to Florida. Everyone called it the Gray House because it just sat there collecting dust, the paint dulling more with each passing season. I'd started to think no one would ever buy it. Then one morning I saw a moving truck out front. I'll admit I was a little excited. Watching a new neighbor move in is about as much entertainment as I get these days. From my porch, I saw a woman step out, maybe late 30s, early 40s, with long brown hair tied back in a loose bun. She looked tired, but pleasant enough. She waved when she saw me, and I waved back. She introduced herself later that afternoon while I was weeding. "I'm Claire," she said with a friendly smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She told me she'd moved from Seattle for a fresh start. I liked her right away. There was something quiet about her, like she was used to being cautious. She said she worked remotely as a graphic designer and didn't really know anyone in town yet. I offered her some coffee sometime, but she politely declined, saying she still had a lot to unpack. For the next few weeks, I'd see her occasionally. She'd walk her dog, a small brown mutt named Toby, in the evenings, or she'd be out checking her mail. But there were strange little details that didn't quite fit. For one, she never had visitors, not once, and she never went anywhere in her car after dark. Then there was the man. About a month after she moved in, I noticed someone else around her house. He wasn't there all the time, but every few days I'd catch a glimpse of him. Tall, thin, always wearing dark clothing and a baseball cap pulled low. I never saw his face clearly. He never came to the front door either. He always went around back. Sometimes I'd see Claire's kitchen light flick on right after he disappeared behind the house, and I'd hear muffled voices, tense, not friendly. I asked her about him once when she stopped by to return a package that had been misdelivered to my address. She froze for half a second before forcing a smile.
"Oh, that's just my brother.
She said.
He's helping me with the house."
That might have been believable if I hadn't noticed the way her hands were shaking when she said it. I wanted to believe her, but from then on, I paid more attention. The next time he came by, it was late, past 11 p.m. I could see through the trees that her lights were all off, but the man was still at her back door, just standing there. After maybe 2 minutes, she let him in. I thought about calling the police, but what would I even say? My neighbor's brother visits late at night? It wasn't illegal, it just didn't feel right. About a week later, I saw Claire again. She looked awful, pale, exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes. She tried to make small talk, but I could tell she was distracted. When she turned to leave, I noticed bruises on her arm. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. The next night, I was out watering my plants when I heard shouting. It was coming from her house. A man's voice, angry, harsh, and hers pleading. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but I'll never forget the sound of something crashing, followed by a dog barking hysterically. Then silence. I called 911 immediately. When the officers arrived, the lights were off in her house again. They knocked on the door for several minutes before Claire finally answered. She looked calm, too calm. She told them everything was fine, that it had been a misunderstanding with a friend. They asked to come in, and she refused. When the officers left, she turned off her porch light and shut every curtain in the house. For the next few days, the house stayed dark. No lights, no movement, no Claire. Even her car didn't move. I told Dean, my husband, that maybe we should check on her, but he told me to leave it alone. "If she's in trouble, the police know about it," he said. I wish I'd listened to my gut. 3 nights later, around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of Toby barking again. Frantic, panicked barking. I got out of bed, went to the window, and saw movement in her yard. There was a light coming from the back door, a flashlight beam. And that man, the one in the baseball cap, was dragging something heavy across the lawn toward his car. I couldn't breathe. It looked like a large trash bag, dark and bulky. He lifted it with effort and dropped it into his trunk. Toby kept barking from somewhere inside the house, but the man ignored it. He got in his car and drove off with his headlights off. I called the police again, shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. They came within 10 minutes, but by the time they got there, he was gone. When they entered the house, they found Toby, scared but alive. But Claire was nowhere to be found. They searched the area for days. The police put up crime scene tape, questioned everyone on the street, even dredged part of the creek behind the property. But they never found her. Here's the part that keeps me up at night. When they ran the plate of the car I'd described, it didn't come back to anyone named Claire, or even the supposed brother. The officer said the vehicle was registered to a man named Adam Carver, who'd been reported missing in Washington the year before. That was when they realized something chilling. The woman who'd moved in wasn't Claire at all. The real Claire Hastings had died months earlier in Seattle. Whoever she was, she'd taken her name, her ID, her car, her entire identity. The man I saw wasn't her brother. He was someone who'd apparently been helping her live under that false identity, until something between them went wrong. The case was never officially solved. No arrests, no body, no closure. The yellow police tape came down eventually, and the house sat empty again for months. Then, just last week, I saw a for sale sign go up. Yesterday morning, I watched a couple with a moving truck pull up and start unloading boxes. They looked so happy, laughing and talking about paint colors. The woman waved at me, and I waved back, just like I had to Claire. When I went inside later that evening, I glanced out the kitchen window, just one more time. There, in the upstairs bedroom of number 9, I saw a light flick on. A woman was standing in the window, staring across the street at my house. For a second, I thought I imagined it, until she smiled. It was the exact same smile I'd seen the first day Claire moved in. The same tired eyes, the same face. But that's impossible, isn't it? Thanks for staying till the end. If you liked The Chill, make sure to like and subscribe. More horror stories are coming soon.